Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to this third TechFugees live session. TechFugees is a global impact-driven organization working to empower displaced people through technology. We're a community of volunteers organizing events, running programs, and building projects with, and not just for, refugees. In March 2020, we started TechFugees Data Hub, a collaborative and collective effort to map the impact of COVID-19, direct or indirect, on displaced communities. We've been collecting data on not only the spread of the virus, but actions taken by grassroots organizations on the ground, governments and NGOs. We list concrete ways in which displaced communities are being supported today, either physically or remotely. This is a collective effort done by about 70 contributors from Australia to Colombia. So far, they've mapped hundreds of situations in 40 plus countries. These live sessions are 1 hour public, open, regular events to raise awareness about what's happening in a specific geographical area. Today it's the Middle East and Jordan, and to feature existing projects supporting refugees and displaced communities. My name is Matthew Gardner. I work with TechFugees. I'll hand over to my co-presenter, Ahmed Bassam, who will tell you what we're going to do today and who we're going to do it with.
Thank you. So, salam, bonjour, ciao, a pleasure to meet you all. Thank you for joining us. So, first of all, we will be having a MENA overview with Matthew, my co-host, as well as then we will be going to Jordan overview and introduction to the guests, and then we will be having Emma Bonar from the Norwegian Refugee Council. After that, we will be having questions and answers from the audience, and then we will be having Dina Alauddin from the Youth Task Force, and then we will have another set of questions and answer, and then finally we will have Saddam Sayale from iLearn, and then we will have another set of questions and answers. So that's the schedule for today. Our speakers, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing your experience and sharing with us the magnificent work that you are doing. Thank you so much again, and I hope we can all continue the conversation afterwards as well, and to connect with each other as much as we can. So we will be starting with Emma from the Norwegian Refugee Council. She's an youth expert as well. I will leave the floor for Matthew to be helping us to introduce Emma. Matthew?
Sure. So I'd like to give you an overview. I'll speak to Emma shortly about everything and the work that they're doing with NRC. I'll give you an overview of the outlook and life for displaced people, internally displaced persons and refugees in the MENA region. They're quite startling statistics, but there is a rich tapestry of social capital, family bonds, and amazing potential for youth amongst refugees and internally displaced persons in the region. There are a lot of forces outside everyone's control, as we know. But the humanitarian community, together with refugees and their hosts, have a big job ahead to secure a bright future for the most vulnerable people in the world. This is contrasted against a bleak outlook for refugees and internally displaced people in this political climate. And as I think everybody knows, there's a predictably negative response of host governments towards permanent settlement solutions for refugees because of COVID-19. There are 4 major conflict areas and 4 major conflict-related crises in the Middle East, in Palestine, Syria, Libya, and Iraq. Statistics surrounding refugees and internally displaced people don't accurately reflect the impact of the current economic crisis in Lebanon, the entrenched impact of the Israeli occupation in Palestine, and the blockade of Gaza. Nor do they reflect the social tensions that arise when millions of people are displaced from their home and seek refuge in the neighboring country. Nor do they tell of the psychological and physical impacts that millions of survivors of war sustain. There is a huge potential I think, and it's commonly held belief, there's a huge potential to contribute meaningfully with supportive pathways to do so. So coming to numbers, there are 21 million people displaced inside Iraq. Iraq has experienced many wars, and the recent ISIS occupation of many parts of Iraq led to unthinkable destruction and human suffering. The needs are enormous, and the politicization of the country means that the rebuilding, literal reconstructing of many parts of the country seem a long way off. Destroyed schools and traumatized children and teachers will take longer to rebuild than the infrastructure. The needs are enormous. Also in Syria, where a 9-year war has resulted in 6.6 million people displaced from their homes inside of Syria and approximately 6 million refugees living in neighboring countries. These countries include Jordan, where there are 800,000 Syrian refugees, Iraq, 247,000, Turkey, 3.58 million, Lebanon, 800,000, and Egypt, 135,000. In some parts of the country, the war rages on, while other parts of the country are looking to reconstruct their homes, hospitals, and schools. International sanctions against Syria make it difficult for humanitarians to support the reconstruction of the country in a meaningful and expedient manner. Palestinian refugees are the world's oldest group of refugees and the largest. The resulting displacement of Palestinians in 1947 is still a crisis today, where Palestinian refugee diaspora can be found all over the world. But in the humanitarian and refugee camp setting, there are 2 million Palestinian refugees and internally displaced persons inside of Palestine, in the West Bank and the non-contiguous Gaza Strip. Similar to the Syria crisis, the region has absorbed the majority of the Palestinian diaspora, and after 72 years, 3.8 million Palestinians still live in refugee camps in the region. So, as I say, some very far-reaching statistics there, and also I think there's a lot of opportunity for a meaningful way forward. So I think the best time now to introduce Emma Bonar, who is a youth specialist at NRC, and Emma's going to go through a quick presentation about her work in camps, and then also we'll go through a quick Q&A. Thank you, Emma, for joining us.
Super, thanks, Matthew. And thanks to the Tech Refugees team. I'm always super happy to engage in discussions with people who are also passionate about the same things as me. So really happy to be invited. You can all see my screen. Can you just confirm?
We can see your whole screen at the moment, yes.
Great. So I'm going to talk a little bit first about zooming into the context in Jordan, and then looking a little bit at what it is we're doing to respond to the situation. So let me just bring this up as a presentation. So if we think about the Jordan context, we've got 670,000 registered Syrian refugees, many more if we think about the refugees that are unregistered. Another maybe 80,000 that are non-Syrian refugees from countries like Yemen, Sudan. The majority of these refugees, up on 80%, live outside of camps. So they're living in rural, semi-urban and urban areas in the country. So very dispersed as a population. There is a high poverty rate. So in some governorates, the poverty rate goes up to about 27%, which is relatively high. And another issue affecting many parts of the world, particularly the Middle East and very much so Jordan, is this youth bulge that we're experiencing. So a very high percentage of the population is under 70% of the population, for example, is under the age of 30. So this presents an amazing opportunity for all these young people to be positive contributors and a part of the development of the country. If I were to zoom in maybe on the top 3 issues affecting young people and more marginalized, refugee, vulnerable young people in particular, the first would be around sort of the high unemployment levels. So very high unemployment. Globally, we know that young people in developing countries are about 4 times more likely than adults to be unemployed. On top of that, for refugees, we have a lot of sectors that are closed. So refugees generally can work in some sectors specified by the government, and these generally tend to be very low-skilled sectors for which an education or qualifications are not necessarily needed. We also have very low refugee participation in the education system, so in the formal education system. So we truly believe at NRC the right to education doesn't stop when you're 13, 14. However, we see huge drop-off in participation for refugees around this age, and sometimes earlier. So we have only about 25% of Syrian refugees of secondary school age actually participating in secondary school. That goes way down to about 2 to 3% if we look at tertiary education participation. So those participating in vocational or higher education. There are also limited opportunities for young people to engage. So limited opportunities for them to be a part of decision-making, safe spaces for them to have a voice and engage in their communities and be a part of the solution. So what do they tell us they want? They talk a lot about learning, right? So learning comes in many forms. Young people want to learn. Some of them want to go to university. Some of them want to learn functional literacy and numeracy skills to better interact with their surroundings and improve the quality of life. They want a voice. They want to be heard. They have things to say. They have potential, and they want people to listen to them and to be a part of communities and of decision-making. They want safe spaces where they can access and socialize with their peers and interact with others, also to develop. And they want to contribute. They want to be a part of this response critically. They don't want us to come and give them services. They want to be a part of the kinds of services that we design. So that's a little bit of the more sort of macro level context. If I shift a little bit now to what is it that NRC does? So in Jordan, we have sort of 5 key areas that we work in. The first one is shelter. So for shelter, we're talking here about having sort of affordable, legal, secure, and adequate housing for refugee populations. So a lot of refugees have a lot of debt, for example. They struggle to pay their rent. We do everything from supporting them to pay their rent, to renovating apartments that they can live in, to installing solar energy so that in their houses so that we can reduce the bills that they receive each month. Another program we run is education. So this is around the education response in Jordan is led by the Ministry of Education. So we work to support them in providing education services for refugees and vulnerable Jordanians. So what does this look like? This is very much about, for example, installing again solar energy maybe in a school to reduce the monthly bills that the school has to pay, to building the capacity of teachers and running sort of psychosocial activities in schools to help make them more inclusive and make the and improve learning outcomes of children. Our livelihoods programs focus a little bit more on income generation. So here we're talking about sort of supporting, preparing people and supporting them to transition into formal employment. But maybe also looking at household level, for example, how can we increase income generation at the household level through, for example, agriculture activities. ICLA, which, sorry, I should have spelled out this acronym, stands for Information, Counseling and Legal Assistance. So this is really about making sure that refugees have the information that they need to enjoy their rights. So everything from supporting children to get a birth certificate issued, which is essential if you want to access any public services such as school, health, etc., to accompanying refugees, for example, to a court should they need to go there. Our last area of intervention is around youth, and this is the one I work on in particular. So here we're talking about sort of education and education as a pathway to whatever comes next. So not just educating young people and helping them learn and develop, but supporting them also in transitioning to whatever it is that comes next, according to their own pathway. It's also about their personal, social, and emotional development. So these two things are complexly intertwined, learning and personal development. So now I'm going to zoom in very quickly to exactly the program that I work on. Worth mentioning that NRC does a lot of other things outside of these 5 categories. Some of them include, for example, water and sanitation activities, which we do across a lot of our programs, and also a lot of advocacy. So when we identify issues or we generate some data or evidence, we use that evidence and data to try to influence stakeholders and decision makers to change policies to make to improve the situation for refugees. So zooming into the, sorry, technical glitch. There we go. Zooming into the program that I work on. So we run this program across different levels. It's not just about learning. As I said before, it's about transitioning to something else afterwards. So we have 3 levels. Each level runs for about 3 to 4 months. Level 1 is about acquiring skills. So classroom-based acquisition of skills. We're talking about everything from the basics of IT to vocations to sort of web editing and more complex or academic courses with universities. Key to this level for us is accreditation. So we want to make sure that these young people have access to quality education. It doesn't matter where they come from, who they are. We want the same kind of quality of education that is available elsewhere. So certification is important to us. So we have multiple partners who work with us to make sure we're certifying all of our courses. For example, the Ministry of Labour in Jordan certifies our vocational training. We also have a international certification from a partner in the UK who's certifying vocational training, so that when a young person finishes with us and leaves the country, for example, we enhance the possibility of them using their skills elsewhere because they have it documented and they have their certificates. We also mainstream through this soft skills. So I mentioned before about social and emotional learning and personal development. These soft skills are mainstreamed throughout the learning because, again, we don't just want the acquisition of knowledge and skills, we want young people to develop and grow opinions, etc. Another thing we mainstream is sort of literacy and numeracy. So there are those who come to us who are illiterate. We integrate a package of literacy for them because, again, fundamental skills that are necessary for interaction in life are these soft skills and these literacy, numeracy, and I would add digital literacy to that. When we move on to level 2, so you've done your level 1, you've got your certification, passed all your exams. We move on to level 2. This is about applying your skills. So you've learned these skills in a classroom environment, but you've never gone out into the world and you've not used them and people haven't seen you use them and you're not sure what to do next. So this is about practicing and applying your skills and preparing to transition out to something more independent, to the wider world, basically. So here we integrate a package of sort of professional and work skills. So how are you going to prepare your CV? How are you going to sit in that interview? You know, practicing these kinds of things, but also project-based learning. So let's say you did carpentry at level 1, you might go to level 2 and you'd work on a project. For example, right now we have a project with primary schools where the young people at level 2 take the furniture from the primary schools, rehabilitate it, bring it back to the schools. They also make furniture for physically disabled people in camps, for example. So this is changing the perception that the community has of the young people and also showing the young people the value that their skills have and how to apply them practically. We then move on to level 3, and this is really an independent level. So this is where the young people sort of leave us and engage in a number of pathways. First one will be livelihoods, and we provide some livelihoods opportunities, but they also go on to formal employment outside of NRC. Social engagement, so a lot of people see the value of using their skills in for social benefit, go on to volunteer or run projects in their communities. And the third is further education. So, for example, a graduate of IT or English language might move on to university or apply for scholarships and pursue a further education pathway. So I hope that gives you a bit of an overview of what's going on in Jordan and what we do to respond to it. Back to you, Matthew.
You mute. You're mute.
It's me, a technologist on mute. Apologies for all that silence. Thank you, Emma, for such a comprehensive overview of your work. I suppose it's a quick view, really, but you're such an esteemed organization. You have a very thorough project there. I wonder, how long has it been running? It's one thing I haven't asked you.
So we started operating in Jordan in 2012. The youth program started early 2013, which is actually amazing because usually this kind of youth programming comes in much later in a response. So we're super proud of that, of having started youth programming in the emergency phase because we know it is critical.
Wow. And has that been replicated elsewhere as well? Is it that kind of new move to bring in programming so soon?
Yeah, I mean, NRC works across, a lot of the countries you mentioned before in your introduction. We run youth programs in most of those countries. I mean, I think there's a very strong focus in any humanitarian response on primary education, basic education. And it's the young people and the adolescents that we forget. We know that children are going to become adolescents and young people. So we're really missing a link there. And so that's why NRC prioritizes this group, because it's not really taken up by enough actors. So we do similar things to this in Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon at the moment, and many other countries in the world.
Okay, wow, very inspiring. And I know we have quite a large audience of technologists here, people from NGOs as well, the humanitarian sector. Of course, I'm going to ask, how do you use technology in your programming?
Yeah, I knew this question was going to come up. So,
Tech-PG.
Yes, a couple of ways. I guess one is it's a modality for us. So a lot of, we're talking about contexts that are in the north of Jordan, in a rural community, in a refugee camp. I can't build a university. I can't bring in, expensive professors. I've got to leverage whatever resources I can to provide that quality education I talked about before. So that means using technology. I'll give you a practical example. So we have a partnership with Arizona State University. They're not here in Jordan, they sit in Arizona. We are the sort of operational wing of that partnership. We've got the presence on the ground, the IT labs, the internet connection, the facilitators. And in Arizona, they have the technical capacity, the accreditation, the content. We work together to provide accredited, structured English language courses for young people. So it's a modality for us, but I would say not 100%. Everything is always blended. We've learned over the years that critical sort of social element of learning is really important. So we blend everything. And I think later we're going to hear from a colleague who works on one of these programs where it's sort of a blended approach to learning. Another way we use technology is so I'd say we consider digital literacy akin to literacy and numeracy, basically. It's a key critical 21st century skill in this globalized world. So we integrate that, and that means everything from the basics of using a computer, for those who've never seen one, to much more advanced web editing, Adobe packages, Photoshop, etc. I'd say a third and final way that we use it now, given COVID-19, we have actually shifted to sort of remote facilitation. So we've been catapulted into a position where we have to, and are learning so much from it, adopt technology as our modus operandi, basically. So that's been fascinating as well.
Absolutely. I was going to ask how things have changed. Just as a final question, I know we need to move to the next presentation quite shortly, but I wonder what kind of impacts COVID-19 has had on your work, and really what are the gaps, and do you find that working from first principles is always done with technology companies, or is it, do you have to adapt technology to you, and particularly in this quite crucial time?
Yeah, I mean, how have we adapted? I'd say that the impact of COVID is first and foremost that those who were marginalized before are even more marginalized now. The only way we could access young people before was to go into their communities and meet their families and bring them out and build trust and engage with them face to face. We can't do that anymore. So unfortunately, the inequalities have widened. We have had to very quickly adapt. So we've adopted WhatsApp as our main approach. That's based on a rapid needs assessment that we did as soon as COVID hit. So we wanted to make decisions based on data. So we have a sort of a detailed guidance for our facilitators on how to use WhatsApp and all its functions to facilitate our courses. it has some limitations. So there are some vocational components. For example, you can't make a joint with 2 pieces of wood physically from your house with WhatsApp. Some things people are going to have to come to our centres to do. Software, if people don't have laptops with Photoshop on them, they're not going to be able to engage in that course, for example. So there are limitations, and we're coming up with solutions every week. We're thinking about a loaning system, for example, of devices at the moment. And maybe if I still have time, I'll just tell you a couple of the things that I think are major needs. I could talk.
Yeah, we have a big audience of technologists here, so please do tell them what you need.
Sure. I mean, there's the micro and the macro, right? Like there are massive macro level things that we need to happen, such as a focus on the more marginalized, greater access to quality education, etc. But maybe if I zoom in on some of the concrete things that I've been exploring recently, or me and the team have been exploring recently. So we would love to have, for example, a digital livelihoods partner. So a partner from the private sector who can source to us some of their digital work. So our graduates can do that work and gain that income. Because our graduates are not legally able to go out into the workforce in Jordan and get IT jobs, for example. That's one example. Another concrete example is displacement and documentation are 2 things that they're quite complicated. So when you're displaced, you often forget, you don't have time, or you're not able to leave with your documents to prove the education that you have, your identity. So when it comes to learning, that's very problematic. So could tech be a part of a solution to digitize or have some kind of online way of storing documentation, certification, proof of prior learning? And maybe a final one is around sort of assessment. So one of the main reasons that we're not able to get all of the fantastic quality accredited courses that we'd like to be able to offer is because assessing people and proving that they've got the level of knowledge for the qualification is very difficult. So we can do it for some courses, but could technology be a solution to that, right? Could we have reliable university exams without a professor or supervisor from a university coming into the center to look at the young people? Perhaps. At the moment, there are very basic systems that we've come across that can do this, but nothing comprehensive enough. So those are just a couple of ideas. I could go on.
Okay, no, I think we should get working on that. Thanks so much for telling us exactly how it is, and for telling a lot of technologists really how it is. I hope people come forward to help as well. We'll certainly try and get some people together. We have some questions in the chat as well, so please do stick around so we can put those to you and all the other panelists too. And thank you for joining us. Thanks everyone for watching. I'll just switch back. Thank you, Emma. Switch back to Ahmad now, who's going to give us an overview also now of in-country. So I've given a regional one, and Ahmad will give one of the country overview now.
So thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Emma. A bit of a very brief on the situation in Jordan. You know that through the decades of various conflicts in the Middle East, waves of refugee communities have been migrating all over the MENA region. As a consequence, whenever we talk about displaced communities and their challenges in the Middle East, we must and really must be more precise about which communities we are talking about. There are very different various communities with different needs. As in Jordan only, we have more than 56 nationalities identified as refugees in Jordan. Yet in the MENA region, if there is one thing is in common between these refugee communities, that is the side of youth. The size of youth is very dominant. And for this TechFG live session, we are hoping that, as with any different session we do at TechFG's live sessions, that we hope to introduce a regional overview of the situation and then zoom on a different regional and yet focused on a one country or a one smaller region as well. So Jordan has almost 30% of its populations or residents are identified as refugees. And that will be giving us more of what is the challenge here in Jordan. So without further ado, and going to the nitty-gritty and the people who are working on the actual sites and actual camps, Dina Alauddin, who is working with Norwegian Refugee Council as well. She's a very experienced person managing projects for the focus of youth, and yet co-chair of the Youth Task Force here in Zaatari camp. She's done an amazing job. Alongside with her, one of the amazing teachers, I would like to say, and exceptional ones from Zaatari camp live with us, Tariq Al-Hariri as well. So without further ado, Dina, the floor is all yours. Please fascinate our listeners as a speaker.
So thank you for this introduction, Ahmed. So mainly, as you said, I'm representing today the Youth Task Force in Zaatari Refugee Camp, and I also work with Emma as a youth coordinator in Zaatari Camp for the youth program. So mainly, I wanted just to focus I would represent all the members who are regular members dedicated for the Youth Task Force, and represent a little bit of brief about the Youth Task Force and when it was established. So we established the Youth Task Force in 2014. It's an action-oriented field level forum, and it is youth focused. We aim to work on advocacy, planning, and coordination. The target age is between 12 and 30 years old. So our main aim is to advance the youth, the youth agenda in humanitarian settings in line with the Global Compact for Young People in Humanitarian Action. As I said, we are a set of members, INGOs, local NGOs, and even sometimes some of the private sector who are contracted by some UN and working for youth. It is co-chaired by UNFPA, my colleague Husseina couldn't join, and NRC. So mainly also we don't only have youth actors, we have also representatives from other sectors because we want to make sure that youth topics are mainstream and that we have comprehensive response. So it is created under the UNHCR umbrella for coordination platforms under protection and education sector working groups to facilitate field level coordination, and the objective is to make an enabling environment for youth in Zaatari camp and make like more better informed youth programming. This is like a nutshell about what is the Youth Task Force. I'm representing my colleagues who are really dedicated to this group, and we meet regularly to make sure that we promote the importance of youth participation. And we do assessment together and joint activities, and we make sure that we don't overlap. Next, mainly how did the youth and the organization adapted during the lockdowns? I have some stories from the field. So like an overview, the type of activities that usually provided by the organizations are safe spaces for social networking, peer support, innovation hubs, psychosocial support activities, vocational training, life and employability skills, volunteering opportunities, English, literacy, ICT related, and recreational activities. All of this have been closed during the COVID-19. The physical spaces have been closed since the mid of March, aligning with the Jordanian government announcement for curfew. And we pivoted like our way of work in short time. We didn't wait and delivered online. Like the pivot was depending on delivering everything online, using and trying, and after making a rapid assessment, as Emma said, to see which better platform to use. So mainly WhatsApp was used, some organizations used Facebook, and some people used Zoom, but it was not really strong in the camp. We have a lot of challenges, of course, like we have limited access to technology. Some youth don't have like smart devices. Or the smart device would be shared by the whole household, so they can't like really organize their time to attend the courses that they want. Although some organizations provided offline kind of supported training, so they can go back and view the course later. It's fine. But if the device is not there at all, they don't have it, that would be a problem. Also, the internet connection is a big problem sometimes, a lot of interruptions. But despite all of this, youth serve organization and youth have great engagement and have a lot of willingness that they want to develop alternative methods and carry on. Sorry, this is a bit of like a long story. It's a very interesting one because this young lady, 13 years old, is registered with the UNHCR Blue Mont Center in their extracurricular support, and she was attending like English, Arabic, and science, and suddenly things have like disconnected for her. So her teacher told her, please make like prepare like do an email for yourself, and she didn't have an email. So her and her colleagues learned how to do it. So she now have an email, and they are sharing the lessons with her through the internet. She has internet access. Blue Mont distributed tablets among their target group. But this is like not always a privilege for all organizations. But like what I liked about this story is that Salam just is very smart, that she started to she changed her habits. Now she's waking up at the dawn to avoid the heaviest hours of internet usage. So like this is how she adapted, and like she never thought that online learning would be like something that she would depend, and that the physical present in classroom is best. But now I think a lot of you are adopting, and I have heard this from other youth, that like online learning could be something that is also smooth for youth who are maybe older than Salam and has a lot of engagement in life. So that would give them space and time. Like it's a self-paced. Another story for UNFPA, because they focus on health matters, so they created 50 youth volunteers group through WhatsApp, who are spreading awareness messages to their families and neighbors and peers about COVID-19. So this is like they have indoor sport, recreational crafts, and English. This is also within their partners quest scope in the camp. UNICEF launched a 14 days challenge through their social media, so to keep like youth engaged, and also like it's a bit of recreational activity through Facebook. And the last example is also from Innovation Hub in Zaatari by UNHCR and Blue Mont. Before the COVID lockdown, in a short time, they did this sensor based dispense sanitizer, so they don't like touch it. So it was a nice initiative. So mainly, as you have found our newsletter that we did to update as an update about the response of our members in response to COVID-19, I just made this word cloud, and like the frequency of words were like learning, assessment, access, internet, and of course youth and COVID-19. It's just like for you to have fun, and you can find the link of the newsletter on Relief Web. I can share with you this presentation, and Ahmed can share it with you. So these are like a collection of methods that maybe some of you can maybe take them, because they can be applied in other contexts. And I collected them from our member organizations. So as smart devices are not common resources for all use, some organizations, I said, distributed tablets, distributed other devices, and even distributed some kits for people to work on if they have some kind of like something that will be craft or they have to work on. Trainers hired from the camp community, which you will meet also my colleague Tariq, who works with me in RCD, will talk more about it. They worked from their households and delivered, carried on with their interrupted courses by making videos of themselves, especially to show the practical content, such as tailoring. Others shared like origami. We had also book clubs, sequence of photo sketches. This was the tool, for example, for our MS Office programs by ICDL, because we are accredited in RC. Our trainers use the screen recordings. These are things that people like innovated. The trainer innovated from the camp. And when resources were not available for trainers in their household, they went to the youth centers across. Of course, this should be in coordinated fashion by organization, because we need to make sure that crowd control is upon the COVID-19 restrictions, and we provide them with the PPEs. For youth workers who kept working from home, they should like always keep up the momentum of the groups that they are facilitating, like keep motivating the trainers who are in the camp and the youth for this transformation and big change, because it happened really suddenly. So we know that some youth may be refusing it. Like we received some messages like, "What is this?" And some of youth like have adapted to it quickly. While a lot of trainers were okay with it, and they were innovative in finding alternative ways. So, like our best advice is, as I said, to keep up the momentum is providing assignments, activities, discussions within your groups with any kind of platform that you are using. Don't feel like just one way. Keep the discussion going. You can close the WhatsApp to become only broadcast when you are not doing the work, so it's not become annoying for the trainer, but also you can open it for discussion when there are courses going. The introvert people, you can make maybe one-to-one call, something, so you get them back into the group again. So common reflections and way forward. Not youth program, sorry, this is a typo. Youth in general, as Emma also said, have appetite to respond in crisis. That's what we have seen. They want to do like a lot of efforts toward their families, their communities during this crisis. And technological transformation is needed more than before, and youth programs shall work more toward preparing youth and trainers to ensure same equality of the offline, because I think a lot of partners agree it's not like before. Like there are a lot of quality missing now. So we need to be prepared more on how to be valid even online, because we don't know if lockdowns will happen. So we're working and I'm sure a lot of partners are working on making this as like a new normal. Solutions for technology access is highly needed to be funded to reach the unreached, because as I said, a lot of refugees don't have access, and internet services are not supported by organizations. It depends on the household income. That's why there is a fluctuation. To ensure that online services are accessible and tailored to youth with disabilities, this was a little, it was missing actually. Like we don't have the language and other aspects. More efforts towards to encounter digital literacy is needed for trainers and for youth. Sorry. Yeah. If you have any questions, and thank you.
Thank you, Dina. That's a bit intense, informative, and gives us only a nutshell of what you are trying to do and what you are doing actually. Thank you so much for that. We have also with us Tariq Al-Hariri, who's a facilitator of the courses with the NRC as well. He has finished his bachelor degree in computer applications as well. he has obtained that bachelor degree online, and from that he started teaching. That's very interesting story as well. So Tariq, without further ado, please tell us about your experience from a student to a teacher and then to a distant teacher as well.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Ahmed. So I am Tariq Al-Hariri. I am working as an online facilitator in Zat Rekab in Youth Center in NRC. Starting with the lockdown. So actually, at the beginning, we have no plans to continue online. But after 2 weeks of lockdown, we started planning for continuing our lessons online. We start communicating with our students through cell phones. After that, we created our WhatsApp groups. We divided the students depending their levels, and we have 5 to 15 students in each group. And we start creating our new curriculum that is suitable for online learning using WhatsApp. And we start sending the videos we recorded in home, quizzes, exams, and the materials we have to share with our students. Some of the main problems we faced in this period, that not all our students has a good internet connection. So actually most of them have no internet connections or a poor internet connections. So we had to convert our videos to reduce the size of them so they can download them from WhatsApp. Most of the videos was shared on YouTube. So we had to download them, convert them, and send it again using WhatsApp. We are continuing until now. We are continuing our lessons through WhatsApp, and we are not stopping doing it online until the lockdown out.
Thank you so much, طارق. شكرا. من علمني حرفا كنت له عبدا. Indeed is that who teach me letter. I am forever his servant. Thank you so much. An exceptional teacher story. Thank you for that, and thank you for joining us live from a Za'atari camp. We really appreciate that. So from that, we will be going into Saddam Sayale. Saddam, he's an exceptional entrepreneur, a social entrepreneur, a director of Majlisna and I Learn in Jordan, and a global shaper and a global shaker, and another tons of things that he does. He's an exceptional person who's trying to advocate for refugees into integrating them with technology. Recently, a maker's space was just started in Al-Azraq camp. Can you imagine that? Saddam Sayale, please give us an introduction of whatever I've just said is not even an introduction about this guy. So please, Saddam, give us a brief. And what are you doing? Please join us.
Hi, Ahmed. Hi, everyone. I'm just wondering, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, fantastic. So I know there are so many logos, but I'm going to make it as quick as possible. But I know I'm last. So thank you, Emma, Dina, Tariq. You were extremely informative. That, I'm just going to give a bit of an on-ground and a bit of an overview of the different organizations that I work with directly and indirectly. So I'm the founder of iLearn, which started in around 2012 as a grassroots movement in Souf camp in Jarash. That's where I'm from. And it started as an organization to work with children who are at risk, specifically dropping out of school. As myself, I'm a dropout myself, and I have learned a lot through different channels and organizations. And I can understand the role of organizations such as NRC that are extremely powerful to help young people and children and other organizations as well. I'm also a board member with Generation Unlimited in New York, and I run Majlisna, which is a member of the family of Civic based in London, UK, but we work closely in Jordan. I'm going to give just a little bit of examples of actions and initiatives and projects that these different organizations we started in Jordan specifically and globally. So the first thing is, which is my baby, is iLearn. So we always been working in 7 different communities in Jordan. And in the start of COVID-19 crisis and the lockdown, we wanted to, as many organizations, to transform our content, our services online, and it's been an extremely huge struggle. And when we started to reach out to parents, caregivers, and young people, volunteers, and children to realize, how can we do this? So like we always believe in this co-design process with the community to be able to provide the best service. And what we found out that many of these caregivers and parents were their income is not sustainable. So they were daily laborers, and refugees who were living in these communities were even more vulnerable than before. So we launched a campaign in the beginning of April. It's called Darsi B'Edak, which is My Education in Your Hands, and which basically we worked with the Ministry of Youth and Ministry of Education and private sector as well. Recently, we were joined efforts with UNICEF Jordan to advocate, basically to advocate for this campaign to reach to private sector and international and local organization, where we ask them to donate used or new devices, whatever it is, and we will be delivering it to parents in these or families in these 7 locations in Jordan. And we were able to reach 700 families, and hopefully by end of this month, before the high school exams in Jordan, we will be able to reach extra 400 families. So it's a lot of operations, and it's quite fun because young people are extremely engaged with us right now in the delivery, in the formatting of these devices, and the maintenance. But basically, the reason I'm talking about this campaign is not about the delivery of these devices, but the question is the vulnerability of the different nationalities or different group of people who are living across Jordan, and they're unable to access not only education, but also the different services that the government is providing or international organizations. So the interesting thing is when we launched this campaign, we started working closely with ministries and international organization in some sort of a policy, but also recommendations. So by end of June, we're developing a report that has a lot of recommendations for public and private sector on how best to reach out to communities who are extremely vulnerable or they live in remote areas. Just an example, when we distributed devices in Tafile and Barbeta area, most of these people were living in tents with no electricity and a connectivity issue. So what we did is we created an off-grid, we're trying right now to create an off-grid solar panels for them to be able to recharge the tablets that we donated to them, but also to be able to connect to the internet through telecom companies. So there are different methodologies that we used, and one of the solutions, for example, in lack of access to internet, what we did is we worked with teachers in these local communities to record all the classes or we use the Ministry of Education content, we download it offline, we put it through Bluetooth in these devices before distributing to families, and that way we solve the whole issue of data. So that was one of the solutions that we created. The second thing is, I'm happy Dina mentioned the 14 days challenge, where actually we were UNICEF partner in creating it as a response to engage young people, especially youth, when the lockdown was 100% across the country in the camps, and it was amazing and very successful. So we enjoyed doing that with young people in both Zatari and Azraq, and it was extremely successful. The second thing, we're partners with UNICEF Jordan. We are the technical partners and the social innovation incubators. And as part of the modality is, like most of these programs or our programs are designed to be offline in the field, hands-on, face-to-face with young people. And what we did is basically, as a COVID-19 response, we created basically to the whole teams who are part of this incubator, a connectivity report. And this connectivity report showed us who are these in youth that we're targeting, who are most vulnerable, who are not connected to the internet, and how can we best reach them. So we distributed devices, SIM cards, and internet bundles to help them to access what we have created, which is a digital library. And a tech solution, what we did is we understand that data or internet, as Dina mentioned, that is not very strong in camps. So it's quite tough to have a sustainable, strong signal of internet in the camp, especially with a lot of pressure, considering the geography of the camp. So what we did is we created this digital platform that operates online, but we also created an offline app. So the youth would download this app on the tablets that we distributed to them. They can watch all the sessions that they're supposed to take, but also once they connect to the internet, they only need to deliver the tasks that they watched in the video through this app. So that was a very interesting solution, very interactive. Young people loved it because now, like what we did is we reduced the stress about data and also the connectivity issue. So we created this digital platform and the offline app. But the second thing we did, we created an online mentorship program where young people can access 24 hours through WhatsApp and live chat tool. We integrated through the app and the platform where they can ask different questions with photos and voice note and so on about their projects, their prototypes and their MVPs, where we can help them within 24 hours with instant mentorship, with technical support. And that was quite great because that reduced basically the risk of, or basically, what we're doing is online social distancing. So that was fun. And many young people are basically engaging with it. They like it. They can use their own language. They can feel free about the different challenges that they face with their social ventures. So yeah, so this is basically what we did in Azraq and Zatari camp since March. The second thing is Majlisna and Civic. We run in partnership with Brendan Van Leer and the Crown Prince Foundation a digital fabrication maker space, which is called Makers Oasis. And we're big believers in community development. So we created the first maker space in Azraq town. That is, their modality is about livelihood for the residents of Azraq camp, but creating that relation between Azraq camp and town in regards of fabrication. I believe, like, skills are everywhere, and and what we try to do is, if there's a carpenter in Azraq town and there's a carpenter in Azraq camp, and how can they co-create a product, and basically how can we also help young children to toys for free, school bags, and so on. And how can we respond to the camp need and the town need? So the Maker Oasis was established early 2019. We have a CNC machine, laser cutter, industrial sewing machines, and so on. And what we did before Eid, before Ramadan ends, we actually brought together a lot of caregivers, and we told them we have this crazy idea. You know, we know these communities are don't have sustainable income, so how can we give joy to the children, knowing that their parents don't have the money to buy them toys or new clothes? And we created 300 childcare toolkits, which had a puzzle created on the laser cutter. It had toys made on from caregivers inside their homes with sewing machines, and you know, some masks, some hygiene stuff, and it was quite fun. You know, children really loved it. It was I love the puzzle thing because no one knew how to do it, but so we got all these different shapes from the children, so it was fun, and caregivers in Azra camp and camp really loved it. And so on. So this is what we did in Azraq Life project and the Maker Oasis. And the last thing is, of course, Generation Unlimited. I joined them in the end of 2019, and I just want to take the opportunity because it's not very, it's still in the MENA region. Generation Unlimited is paving the way to work in Jordan and in MENA. So what is Generation Unlimited? And so it's a movement to prepare the largest generation of 1.8 billion young people in history for the transition to work and engaged citizenship. So it's mainly, it combines an interesting model, and I really think it's very interesting because we complain a lot about the systems are not being able to update itself. Systems are not being able to respond quickly to young people's needs. So Generation Unlimited came as a response to that, and but also to bridge the skill gap between all these different stakeholders in the private sector need, the international organization, but also what does young people need and what do they want right now. So I joined them as a board member, as a youth board member. I'm one of 4 young people from the all around the world, being part of this board to bring youth voices but also to localize Generation Unlimited in our countries and regions. So it's quite interesting, and I'm sure you heard about the Learning Passport and the Youth Challenge that UNICEF Jordan and with its own local partners are doing to help young people create projects in different sectors that are related to employability, but also skills building. So this is basically it. I know I was very quick, but I'm very excited to hear your questions. But also, as you see on the top of these pages, they're all the social media handles. So you can always reach out to us and ask us all these different questions if you were not being able to do that here.
Thank you. Shukran, Saddam. Thank you so much for that brief, I would say. I know that you have a lot on your side. Thank you so much for that. I highly encourage the audience to write us questions if you have in the chat. Me, myself, I have dozens of questions for Saddam and the other speakers. So I highly encourage you to have or to write questions in the chat, please. Saddam, the question is, how can people get involved and help you grow sustainably, mentioning the Azraq makerspace, and to combine it with just one question we had recently, and how was it funded?
Amazing. So at the beginning, I mean, I'm a big believer in partnerships. So that's why we brought Azraq municipality on board. So it's quite fun to have the Maker Oasis have civic logo, Crown Prince Foundation, and Azraq municipality. So to create a local sustainability model, the building that we have is owned by Azraq municipality, and basically they donated it for us to use it at the makerspace to help young people and caregivers in Azraq to have a place where they can build skills that they need. Crown Prince Foundation, they have TechWorks, which is another makerspace in Amman. And I believe, like to decentralize all these resources is you need also to bring it together to help communities in rural areas. And Civic, provided with Bernard Van Deer Foundation some seed funding to kickstart the makerspace. And now we're building this business model where we're trying to build a brand which is made in Azraq. It's quite fun, like we're experimenting with the community. So the community is very engaged. So now, like, for example, we're building a story about makers in Azraq. So there's like a children's story coming out about makers in Azraq Camden town, where children are to know more about vocational work. That is not, like we know that there's like, oh, I have to go to college and so on, but there's such a huge value for makers all around Jordan. And I think to highlight that, to make it part of our culture, but also to embrace such brands that are made local, it's extremely important.
Another question for you, Saddam, as a founder, a West Global Shaper, and Generation Unlimited board member. How important are design and data in your work in Jordan and in the Middle East? That's a tough
one. So, I mean, for me, I think, all the organizations that I'm part with as a fellow or as a board or as a founder or a director, I find data very interesting. I think decision making. I think today in Jordan we're struggling in building valuable data that leads to good decision making. I think today when we talk about connectivity, is we don't have an actual number of the amount of people who need our support to give them connectivity. So far, there's so many organizations that are working to benefit the community that around them or their programs, but they're unable to reach a collective action because there is no visible number. Like, how many devices do we need today? How many communities don't have internet connection? Why there is weakness in internet connection in Zatari? And so on. These questions, if they were based on data and validated through different reports, I think it will lead to a collective action. And today, I feel with COVID-19, we are faced with a challenge. It's either we come together to solve a bigger issue, to be able to transition to the digital world. And I think Jordan today have an opportunity, but a challenge. How basically to, we always talk about the fourth industrial revolution, is how to transition to that. It's an opportunity today, and what we need is data to be able to make good decision making, whether on the highest to the smallest organizations. So yeah, so I love it. The World Economic Forum always encourage about data. So yeah.
Please, opening the mic, please mute it. Thank you so much for that. Sorry about that, Saddam. Good, very interesting point. Data-driven decisions are really missing over here due to lack of data. So hopefully data collection, data management would be managed in a different way, in a more
I just want to give a funny example. The residents of Azraq camp are 18,000 people. That's the estimate. There is actually no exact number. And when we went to the statistic departments in Jordan and asked, we want to know how many children are living in Azraq under 5 years old, and they gave us 14,000. So we were just wondering, is like, how is that possible? Like, there are only 4,000 people producing 14,000 children. So yeah, so I think we have an opportunity today to make correct decisions, to have enhanced, improved, accurate data, to be able to help organizations like ours and other organizations to make better decision making and better use their resources in helping beyond their inner circle.
Mhm. One last question. I think that it is really important, since we are talking on a global shaper level. What advice would you give to people wanting to start a similar project in different areas in the world, since you have the floor now and a lot of people are listening to you from different parts of the world? I think that's very, very helpful would be for them to start from where you have started and where you have reached, Saddam. I think that a lot of the time you have the same question.
Yeah, and always, like my answer would be is give the floor to young people, give the floor to caregivers, let them speak up. I think I'm always touched by an article was written a few years ago, not a year, less than a year ago, on Hibr. A Syrian mother talked about being provided with psychosocial support, and she answered this article with a question, with an answer. Basically, she said, "I just want to feed my children." And I think it talks a lot about our priorities and our programming and how we respond, rather than have organizational. It's a balance. It's a matter of balance. I think my advice is always to have the balance where the community voice is there, but also our organization agenda is being delivered, but making it bottom up rather than top down. And always now, I think it's very interesting to be tech enabled. I think one of my mistakes is always relying a lot on field work, as important as it is. I think today, I love this, that all organizations are challenged on how to transition online or to be tech enabled. And what I love about this is everyone is thinking innovatively. So I think in the near future, we will see so many innovations, so many great small things done by young people to solve an issue that they're being faced with.
Thank you, Saddam. A very interesting approach. I would highly agree with you on that. Give the youth power. I think that is happening in Jordan. I think that it needs a lot of improvements, yes, but I think we will be reaching that, knowing that 60% of residents in Jordan are actually under 18 years old. And that's a good statistic, I promise. That's a good data, I guess. And I would like to highlight and mention that we have a lot of questions mentioning that the COVID cases in Jordan regarding refugee camps. I would like to highlight that more than 80% of refugees and refugee communities in Jordan are living in the host communities. And we only have 4 cases near Prince Hassan refugee camp, Marka camp in another naming, were hit by COVID. Other than that, in other camps, there had been zero cases. It's very limited impact through the refugee communities in Jordan. I would like to highlight that and assure that refugee communities in Jordan had been not hit with COVID-19. There is no confirmed cases so far, and that's one of the consequences, or as a result of the early lockdown in Jordan and the early response to that. I would like to highlight that because we have multiple questions about that. To wrap up, Matthew, my co-host and my partner, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'd just say as well, a lot of the questions we've had have been around connectivity, how many devices are needed. We see there is some data now on connectivity which is available. Very pleased to see that a conversation has begun between a university and some people on the call. Hopefully that will flourish, so I'm glad we've done that. But I know all those questions seem to be pointing to the one big question I had, having discussed this before as well, which is we face the risk of having an uneducated generation across the region, just as a result of COVID, the wider implications of COVID. Maybe even in Jordan too, even though the camps haven't been hit by COVID, we could have a break and some kind of dissolution with education. So I'd just like to ask everybody really, I know Saddam, you've been talking about the maker community, very impressive work you've been doing there. Do you think the work you're doing is going towards reducing that risk, and can it be pivoted towards reducing the risk of having an uneducated generation in Jordan, and perhaps the rest of the region can learn from it too? So Saddam, if you're here, go first. I invite you, or anybody really. Emma.
Is that Emma? Emma, please, or who was speaking?
Okay, I'll be very brief. Yeah, so I mean, in my mind, the ideal scenario for Jordan is entities like NRC are not needed, right? Like our end goal is to not be needed. Who should be responding? It should be the government and civil society. So alongside the practical day-to-day work that we do to provide, to make sure that young people access education, in parallel, we're working with government to support them, to generate the evidence and the information that they need to inform them about what we're learning and the complexity of the issue so they can build responses. And parallelly, working with local organizations on the ground, instead of directly implementing in host community, working with these local organizations so they build their capacity and are able to take over. So I feel like that's a kind of an end goal in a way. In the meantime, where these young people are not accessing learning, to avoid this lost generation, we need more funding for these kinds of programs. We need more platforms to talk about young people. And one thing I just wanted to mention finally was the Youth Compact. So there is a global movement called the Compact for Young People in Humanitarian Action that we can share. That is an amazing, massive group of people who, and organizations and states who are working together to try to make this issue more visible at the global level. We're going to launch that in Jordan as well. So we all need to work together to make the issue more visible, to have the responses coordinated. And if while that doesn't happen, all we can do is try to be as innovative as possible and do the kinds of amazing programs that people have talked about on this call.
Great, thank you. And I guess in terms of contributions as well, I'm sure you welcome some engineers or tech designers who can help you make this transition with payment in kind as well.
I have so many ideas about this. Emma, you're amazing. I think I always love, like looking globally and then looking into, country level. Like there was just a report a few days ago that was published about, the risk of children dropping out of school and many children going to the market, to the business, and be child laborers, and that will be increased. As you know, today is the International World Day for Child Laborers, to stop it. And in Jordan, there are like 76,000 children who are working. And there's an estimate around 20 to 30% increase this year just because of the COVID-19 crisis. And it's quite crazy. And I'm just like thinking, as I said before, I think today we're faced with a surprising, crisis that is pushing the boundaries of all these different organizations to be innovative with the solutions they provide. And as I always advocate, I think, such like iLearn, when we started, we were a solution that works in Suf Camp. And as much as I go, around Jordan and all these small communities, villages, refugee camps, and so on, I see more and more solutions by young people and the community that it can work. I think, as Emma said, funding is needed, but I think today we're faced with that. The question is who to fund to be able to solve such a crisis or such problems. And I think today I'm really advocating for all these different international organizations and donors is to look into grassroots solutions and find them and scale them on a national level, because that's how we will be able to solve all these problems about, young people not being in education or training or being employed. Today, young people are talking about employability, not about unemployment. I know so many young people who are refusing jobs because it's inhumane. And I think we need to find grassroots solutions to bring that voice up. So, for example, the Ministry of Labor to change their policies about the employability. So young people have the right to be in proper jobs, jobs that they can, build their skills and knowledge rather than use them. For children is actually, you can find so many small grassroots movements by young people in these villages and camps that if you give it enough resources, and not necessarily financial, enough resources, I think, and you scale it to like the neighboring communities, I think you might have the answer there.
Great. So really upskilling the whole country, I would say. Gina, briefly, do you have any thoughts on avoiding this lost generation or lost education generation?
Yeah, I have been like for maybe 1 year reading about the future of work, these kind of topics that we need to focus on as organizations, not to keep traditional and keep giving the same things and not altering. So the future of work needs new skills. We need it's not only technology, it's about interpersonal skills, critical thinking. As you said, like the employers now, some of them are inhuman. So these kind of trainings will be needed also for the employers, not only for the youth. Sometimes we have these kind of programs that link youth with some organizations as an internship, but we never know how much this employer is working well with them. So I think it's both sides. The future of work need to be like some programs need to be focused on this for both sides, the employer and the youth. So that's for me. Like it's not. It can be like even like mainstream for humanitarian work at a certain level, a very generic kind of view.
Thank you,
Thank
Dina.
you.
Thank you.
It does sound like you're looking at an EdTech incubator, perhaps, for Jordan, with a very comprehensive one. On the positive side, I could see that working very well.
Matthew, please, if you we need one.
Yeah, well, that's
they're actually
coming. So perhaps that's something for the tech community to talk about and apply their learnings from EdTech. Hasn't always been so successful in Europe, but there's always a way forward and a way to iterate. So ending on a positive note, I'd like to thank everyone really for your contributions today. We've learned a lot, we've packed a lot in. We have run over, unfortunately, but I think it's been worth it in terms of the content that we received. So thank you. And I'm glad that we can end on a positive note and see that there is perhaps a way forward and a way of avoiding this lost generation if we keep working towards it too. So Ahmad, did you have anything else to wrap up with?
Yeah, thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Saddam, Dina, Emma, Tariq. Gives you an insight of the Jordanian community and who's working on the ground, Jordanians, expats, international organizations, refugees, everyone's trying to make a difference. I think that what's happening here in Jordan gives you a good example of a hospitable country, accepting everyone, trying to leverage and to aid and yet to make a difference. We know Jordan is a hospital country, yet it suffers a lot of water shortages and a lot of challenges, yet it manages to host multiple millions of refugees and trying to make it as better as possible and as livable as possible, including, configuring, adapting everyone into the community. Thank you everyone for joining us in this session. I hope you can join us in the later sessions as well. I hope the conversation between us all would be continued afterwards. The speakers, please, the links that you have mentioned, please email them to me so we can share them with the people who attended the session and on the social media platforms. Thank you, everyone. Good evening
And Ahmad, we have also, stay tuned. We're back on the 26th of June. Again, 2 weeks on Friday, we'll be coming from Greece with a similar format. So please do stay tuned for that. You can keep in touch with us at techrefugees.com, our Facebook group, TechRefugees, our Twitter at TechRefugees. Please do get in touch. Start a conversation on Facebook too to get all of the links. We have a Slack you can join too. And also our mapping tool is bit.ly COVID refugees, or go to techrefugees.com. You'll find everything you need there. Please do stay in touch, and we'll certainly be in touch with everybody we spoke to today.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.